It is my privilege that we can continue our education seminar to understand our children and to understand how to help them to drive their own cars and their own lives accordingly. We want to speak in this presentation about the two pillars that are basic in education. We remember that our children are fantastic beings, and we see how diverse they are, that different they are. And there is no issue to not be different. This is how the Creator hath thought, to make everyone individual different. But that what really matters is all the same. So everyone needs to be in control of his life. That means not life itself, but how he lives it. Life itself we cannot control, but we must control how we drive it, how we do it. And everyone can have different perspective, different goals, but they all need to learn how to stay on the road. The roads are going everywhere, and it doesn't matter where they want to drive. It's just important to stay on the road. And education must help them to see the road, because the road is set by the law. So we must know for sure why, what, and how we have to do in education. And we are still there in explaining the purpose of education, and then the content, and at the end also the method. So we have seen in the last presentations, but also in real life, that there is a conflict between mother and child and mother. And the question is, why does the child has claims to its mothers? Are these claims justified? Why do these little beings sit on a throne and want to be served? Where does that come from? The second and even more important question is, why does the mother want something from her child? Is it correct that she wants something from the child for herself? Does the child need to fulfill the mother's needs? So that's also a even worse situation than the child sitting on the throne. Now imagine sitting mom on the throne, wanting something from the child for herself. And then why can they not communicate always in harmony with each other? Why are there different expectations arising again and again, bringing conflict and difficulties in life? So we must answer these questions, because the greatest traumas, the greatest issue that every human being has is because he does not know how to have his mother relationship. It's not that I have found it out or made it. It's just an observation that is general. And there is also an explanation to why mothers are so important in the child's life. As we have seen that there is an umbilical cord there, a dependency of the child to its mother. So before we go into the practical aspects, let us very shortly review what we have learned so far, so that we can have always an overview of the whole picture. You see, for me, it's very important, and I think for every teacher and every parent who wants to educate, he always needs to have a very clear overview. He must know when things happened in that big picture, where does he put them? But if we don't have the big picture, we can never have a clear orientation in our approach of education. So let's see how man was put together. So he is body, that is his physical part, and that is all together in his cortex, in the brain. And then he has a spirit that is above the cortex, and there where they meet, where they co-work, that's the soul, that's life. So everything according to the law, as you remember, is made to be a channel. And as a channel, you must fill up that channel and also has an output and to give that what you took. So the human beings need, in order to accomplish something, they need power. And they have means that they have to introduce as well as into their body as into their spirit in order to do anything. So the body has two needs. He needs chemistry and he needs the electricity, electrical current. Those are the two things that make the body function. Now the spirit also has two needs. He needs information. He needs to live from words because he's a spirit. So that's the thing he has to use in order to do something. He cannot do something from himself. So for the spirit, the power is the words. And of course, he must take those words from a source. That is his binding to the source. Now, 4 needs, 2 for the body and 2 for the spirit. Now we need to know if we are a channel, we need to know where is the entrance and where is the exit. And so we have the first entrance, which is identity. It's a spiritual entrance. It's what the spirit believes himself to be. And that's the first entrance. The second entrance is where the spirit gives the electrical input into the cortex, but there must be an entrance where he has to do that. And then we have a few entrances in our body, mouth, nose, and skin, in order to take in chemistry. So all this were put together to function in an order. And we need to know that the order always is a circuit. That's why I paint God as a circuit, because he is the source of all things. And since everything in creation takes all the means from him, at the end, everything must return to him. And so in between him and what returns to him, whole creation must be channels, taking and giving, so that this big circle can be accomplished. So God creating everything according to his own image, we can see that from the biggest function, the biggest instrument, so to say, to the smallest. It's all a circuit. It must start in a place, and in that place where it starts, it also ends. So the human being must work the same. As an individual, we must have an inner circle. That is where we start with the power and where do we finish it. So the main entrance is, who am I? But as it is in the physical, what you have to take in is set by the Creator. So it is in the spiritual. The Creator set the spirit so that he can only incorporate, so to say, he can only take in things that he must examine at the entrance as being truth. There is never a capacity in the spirit to take anything else in except truth. That's why there is a pre-examination of the information before he gets it in. And only when he believes that the words are the truth, then he takes them. That's why God gave him the law as an evaluation, an examination issue at the door. Before anything is taken in, it must be examined to be the truth, because only the truth can be taken in by the Spirit. So if he believes the words, so he examines them to be the truth, he takes them in, and by that he trusts the source that information comes from. And we know there are only 2 sources. It's either the lie or the truth. And God is the originator of the truth. And we know that the devil is the originator of the lie. So when we take in the truth, then out of that power we give decisions. Those are exits that come into our body. We do something with the information we took. And for this, we also need chemistry. So the Spirit must provide the needs of the body. All this are His actions. And through the body, He makes the output and fulfills the purpose of His creation. So the purpose is that what makes us happy. It's not the words that we take in. It's not the trust to the binding. It's not the food that we take in. Even though all of this God made so to make us pleasure, and everything He made was made to give us pleasure. And this, but what the fulfilling of the pleasure is, what really brings us in peace, is the fulfilling of the purpose. You see, when people lose their purpose, when children have no clear purpose, then they get lost. You see, when I was a little child, I don't know how it comes, but I knew that I wanted to be a pastor. I wanted always to serve the Lord. Since I remember, I never thought to become a pilot or whatever other job to do or profession. For me, it was to be a pastor. And so since very child, very early, when I started reading, the Bible was my reading book. And I was interested in those things that make a pastor a pastor. I got baptized with 16, and I immediately started to do my training as preaching and wanting to help the people. So that was my life purpose. And only when we have a purpose and we fulfill that, we are happy. We cannot be happy without having a purpose. So that must be very, very clear. That's why children from very early must be made aware. Now, of course, you ask them, what do you want to become as a profession? And then at a certain age, they are all teachers, then they are all whatever they see from their parents. But none of my parents was a pastor, so I don't know how I came, but I believe that God put that there in me. But we must help our children very early to have a focus, to know where they focus their goal so that they can accomplish it. Because it's only the purpose that brings fulfillment. Every depression that a child has and an adult is because they lose their purpose. So that's why we need to know all these things, how we were created, how we were put together to have this big picture. And I believe this is the big picture of the human being. It's there, and now we can go into details and might get even lost into details, but we never get lost in the big picture. Because all those details, we know where to put them in which place. So, how did the change in the human being come? Because we have seen last time that we all are born thinking we are gods. So how did that come into existence? So all the problems could only arise because someone, our first parents, believed a lie to be the truth. Because you can never take in anything except you believe it's the truth. So the serpent had to tell them a lie that they would believe to be the truth. So the serpent tells them, and this is the suggestion of the serpent, you can become a god. That is, you can become a higher being if you transgress the forbidden law, if you take and eat from the fruit, because God only wants to keep you low. That's why He didn't give you this right fruit to eat, because this fruit would just lift you higher up than it can be. Now, how the first parents believed that they could become God is just a mystery. How they could believe a creature, that is Eve the serpent and Adam his wife, to know it better than God is unexplainable. To trust or to believe the words of a creature compared to the Creator is totally inexplainable. That's why it will remain a mystery how our first parents could believe, even though they had a law and they had the word of God, you will die in the day you eat, that they believed the opposite. They would not die, but they will be lifted higher. But you see, they could never, ever transgress and put away with God's commandment, except they believed the serpent to be truth. So I hope you understand that only deception could bring mankind into the situation where we are now. So they both believed a lie as being the truth, because they could not take in a lie. If they would have from the beginning believed God to be truth, then everything else that would contradict what he said would be exactly a lie. So that's the definition of a lie. It's the opposite of what God's word is. So then they would have said, okay, the truth is clear, the lie is clear, we live from the truth, not from the lie. But the serpent sold a lie as truth. And how they did it, how they come, we don't know, but they believed a lie to be the truth. That's why when they took in the lie, they distrusted God and trusted Lucifer, and Adam trusted his wife. And by this, he broke the law, because he can only live from truth. He can never live from lies. That's the law of dependency. It's like the body would take, instead of oxygen, carbon monoxide. That would be his death. And exactly the same it is on spiritual level. If the spirit takes in a lie, yes, believing it's the oxygen, believing is the truth, it will kill him. There is no other way to live with carbon monoxide. You can only live with oxygen. So the spirit can only live with truth. So when he took in the lie, he was changed, that he became inside himself a lie, believing now that suggestion that he took in first as a truth to be the truth. So that's why he changed inside. And of course, if he changed inside, now he can never fulfill his purpose of creation anymore. So how did that change according to the relationships? Because this is what we need to explain, because our issues that we all have is with our relationships. So let's see how this dynamic develops because of this way. And I'm simplifying the big picture. So here is God. Here is my identity, the truth. I know I'm a creature. I have to take the words of God, which is the truth, in, and I do that by believing them. That's why we have faith at the entrance, because you must evaluate first and examine if that is the truth. Faith is the result of an examination that what was offered to you as a means is also the truth. Okay? Faith is that action that comes after the evaluation of the information to be truth. And this is how we are binding ourselves to a source. So the binding of self to a source happens to trust, but you must first believe the words of the person in order to trust it. So, of course, if once that person got your trust, you might believe without checking it, which is also not very smart. So, we bind to the source by believing that it tells us the truth, and then we take that in, we do something with it, we do decisions, and our decisions go through our body as an output, as an exit into actions. So this is the channel that we are and how we function. And now at the exit, we have all our environment. All people and animals and even Lucifer, the enemies, are at our exit, not at our entrance. That's why the first relationship where we take the words is we'll live from that relationship. And at the output, we'll live with them or in a relationship, but not from a relationship. So this is the dynamic of relationships, because I need to be bound to a source where I eat from. And I need relationships in order to accomplish the purpose of my life, that is, doing things together. Very important to understand this. God made it plain in His basic law, which is at the basis of all the 10 Commandments. And the first law says you need to love God from all your heart, from all your soul, from all your powers, because you live from Him. You have no way to live from something else than the truth and then love. And then the second law says you take those things in, but they are not for you. They are there to be given away. That's some of the greatest issues. I just recently spoke to a youth group, and they were very amazed that the love they need is not for themselves. Now, these are youth that have been grown up in Christian families, and they are totally ignorant of the basic law of all things. And unfortunately, this is not a singular case. I do these seminars because I know that, I don't know how many, 99% of all the parents, of all the Christian parents, have no clue how the human being works and what the 10 Commandments mean. Yes, they take it as literally as the Jewish nation did it, so that's why it never helps them to accomplish anything in life. That's why we don't know how to deal in our relationships, what we have to do. So parents need to know this is the way we were made to be. But now, through the deception, we are born with the wrong identity. And we take in, through the lie, the wrong words, believing them as truth. And so, evidently, at the exit, to whom are we going to give what we took from others? So the deception is bringing the whole channel into a terrible situation, because now you have no one to live with. You only have people to live from. And if you're religious, you live from God, you live from here, you live. Every concentration is just on yourself and how to live from these relationships and from their information. And this is how, when you break the first commandment, taking in carbon monoxide instead of oxygen, how can you keep the second? They are all in a circle. If you break the first, you break all of them by no choice. Yes, so you have nothing to give, or what you give comes out exactly what you took. You took a lie, you live a lie. So if the first commandment would be kept, if we live from the truth, which has its origin only in God, then, like I said before, everything would be fine. All laws would be fulfilled. You can never break any following law if you keep the first. Now, I hope this gives us an overview. It was a long introduction, but I think very important when you speak, when you educate, how to educate. So, let's come to the two pillars of education that we need to discuss today. So, this lie that we are all born with, without exception, no human being was born different. We all were born with this inner lie in which we believe, and this is pride. And the pride has a content, that's the motivation that comes out of the lie. And pride says, I am spiritually independent. So if you're a God, you think you live from yourself. That's how every child thinketh. Every patient that I ask, where does your love coming from? They say, from themselves. That's why even in this youth group where I talked, they say, you need to love yourself. Well, if you need to love yourself, then that means love must be something that you need for you. But there is no law for that. If you're spiritually dependent, then you are just a user of love. But if you are producing love, that means you're spiritually independent, then yes, you must first have love for you and then for the other. It's very confusing. Pride says, I orient myself after myself. That is, I am the measure for everything. If you're God, you're the measure for everything. And your ideas, your way to be, that's all what counts. So you're centered on yourself, on your own orientation. And then the child and each one of us think, I must not give an account for what I do. If I use my own means, how would I ever need to give an account to him who made the means that I should use them correctly if I have my own means? If I produce my own love, my own power, then that's it. You see, people believe that it's their power, it's their time that make them move. Well, a greater self-deception is not possible. Nothing, with no exception, can do anything from itself or with its own power. But this is pride. It's one result of the lie that we were born with, and the other is selfishness or self-centeredness, and it's the ego. And the ego says, I'm alive for myself. I live for me. The idea that I shared with this youth group that they were not made for themselves. They were made to do something. They said, well, so did God only create me to do something? Yes. That's so foreign for our thinking because we believe I was made for myself. The Christians believe that they were made for themselves so that they have a good time with God, they have a relationship. So they don't understand that God is a worker. Jesus says, I am working because my Father also is working. There is nothing you can see around you that does not work. Only the selfish heart of man is concentrated on itself and says, I live for me. Yes, I do some work, but that's not the purpose of my life. Well, then we have not understood law and we have not understood God. God is an active being and He made that everything should be active. because that's fulfilling. But if I think, oh, I'm here for myself. I say, no, you're here to do something. That's why we are so unhappy. That's why children and youth are so unhappy, because they live and are concentrated just what should fit their things. They think they were made for themselves. That's one very terrible result of the lie in us. Another result is all the people around me are there also for me. That's why the child, from its birth, sits on the throne and says, Mother needs to do it for me, and has expectations from Mother in all things. And are mothers different? No, they never check to see that they are also even more selfish than pride, because they now have grown that plant that when the child is born, it's a little plant. But as through education, we never eliminate that. We feed that, the plant grows higher and higher. And the higher the mother has a measurement for what the child should be and how life should happen, the stronger the mother becomes to force the child to do that. And she's very upset, telling the child, oh, you have hurt me. But I think I spoke last time about that. Mothers and fathers should never use words that show that they are hurt personally by what the child has done. So that's a terrible situation. People around me are there for me, to please me, to do what I want, and I should be just the king and command them wherever they have to do. They have to do it for myself. And parents are so fooled here when they don't see that their children were not given them to please themselves. Children were not given them that they should just command them what is right and wrong, so that they then should be very fulfilled and happy. That's a terrible error. It arises from the lie that I'm a God. And then others need to satisfy my needs. Oh, I have this need to have a mother that loves me. I have a case in which a 20-year-old daughter is longing so hardly that her mother should love her. I say, you're 25 years old. She says, I need my mother. I said, why? Why would mother play a role in your life? You see, it looks like love. She's attached to her mom. But all that she wants from her mom is to satisfy her needs, to be loved, what she thinks would satisfy her. She believes if she just would have a mom that loves her, that would not fight with her, that would always do what she wants, she would be happy. I know this family for a long time, and I see how the dynamics are in the mother as well as in the child. So each one expects from the other to satisfy his needs. The child wants to have time with mom. Mom says, I need time for myself. So everyone expects from the other one something. The mother wants to be left alone and says, you are now old enough to do your job. And the child wants to not be left alone. So what a difficult situation. And these are adults, people. Why does it come to this place? Because in early childhood, parents have not understood what they should have understood, and that is the law of life. I mean, there is one law that governs the whole life, it governs the whole universe. It is that law that says nothing can exist or function from itself. So pride is non-existent in the law, not even on spiritual level. I cannot produce anything. All my outputs are because I took an input. Yes, my muscles use it, but my muscle have no own power. My stomach has not his own food. My lung has not its own oxygen, and my heart has not its own blood. Nothing can exist or function from itself, but it was made to give. Nothing was made for itself or himself. There is no self-purpose. So I hope that that is clear into our minds. So this is the case, this is the setting where the child is born with selfishness and pride, and it all comes from the innate error. Now, what is the first purpose in education? If this is the case, everything a child does, that it does out of the inborn lie. So all the information it picks up, it can never evaluate them correctly. And whatever the child does is wrong. And this is what parents need to know, because some are very surprised that, until now the child was so brave, was obedient, and suddenly it changed. Well, they were total ignorant, while the child was complying with the conditions and what the mother said and the father, because of it was the easier way to go. Because we are made so to take always the easier way. This nature will never take the hard way. Yes, it goes the easy way. And when at this time it's easier to comply with the rules of the parents, it just goes with it. If it's easier not to comply with the rule, it goes with that. So let's be very clear. The bravest child that does anything out of pride and selfishness is as evil as the child that does all the obvious evil things. So I must have told you maybe last time the case of those parents that has two daughters. And one daughter is always getting sick because of the conflicts that there exist in the family. And the other daughter, the younger, is the rebel. So this daughter doesn't get sick, but it rebels. The one is 11, the younger is 10. So here, the parents are happy with the older child because it's a brave child. And its diseases even helps the parents to say, we have to pity this child, give them some more care. But the other child that is rebellious, that tells the parents, look, that's making them a hard time. Now, for which child should they be more thankful? They should be thankful for both childs, because a child is a great gift. It is a great help for the parents to see their problem. So they should always be thankful for their children. But for which child should they be more thankful? Now, when I suggested to them that they should be more thankful for the younger child that is rebellious, they, at the first, had a hard time to understand. But it's better that things are obvious that things are hidden. You know, the people that are outside okay, but are inside like this, are the worst people. Bible calls them hypocrites. That means they cleanse the outside behavior. They have the correct lifestyle. They do not do this and that, and which is wrong. They just are doing charitable things. But all of their actions, when put to the test, are from, I'm doing it for myself. It's unconscious. That's why I say when it comes to proof, they might see it. They might get angry. So it's better if things are seen that, however, are there. Because if they're not seen, you might think they're not there. But they're there. It was there in Peter's life that he would deny his Lord from his birth. He just had no opportunity yet to do it. But he was full conscious in his consciousness that he was not going to betray his Lord. But when he was tested, it showed. So parents should be thankful for children that challenges them. Because it's not only showing that the child has an issue, but it also brings out that the parents also have an issue because they cannot handle it. You see, if you cannot handle a situation, then you have an issue. And if a rebellious child gets out of the parents all their evil nature, it's worth it. It's worth it. Because then two things become evident. The child gives an evidence that it's wrong, but the reaction of the parents give also clear evidence that they're wrong. So, that's why parents should be thankful for rebellious children, because they really show what's in them. They don't hide it. And so, from that what is visible, you can go on the invisible to be changed. But when this brings out a nice visible thing, what would you change? You see, this is why Jesus says the healthy people don't need a physician. They're just healthy. They don't need a physician. So I hope that we understand that when things comes out, it's better than if they are hidden. Now, let's go to the beginning. You have a newborn child, and you know that is born like this. What is the first purpose of education? The first purpose of education is to make the child aware that it has something in itself that is wrong, that makes its own life miserable, focusing on self, thinking it's the king, and so on. And there are two pillars in education that make these two things, pride and selfishness, evident, and also helping very clearly to remove them. So the first thing that we need in order for pride to be visible and to become evident, you need basic rules in the house. Because what is a law in the house? A law just tells the child, you're dependent. It shows the child it's not independent. And basic rules show that it must give an account, because it does not use its own means. And it needs an orientation of the one that gave him the rules. Because the rules prove you are dependent. And rules or basic rules, it's the same, I would say, like laws. So in the family, if there are no rules, no laws, then the child lives in a jungle. That is, how shall it orient ever to understand that something it is wrong? And how shall it then, when it sees the wrong, to remove that? So you need rules from the beginning, very clear rules, everlasting rules. I don't speak about rules that are different at each age. No, that's not education. You educate something that the child keeps in his life and helps him to drive his life and his car always, because rules never change. At no age. They must be basic. Yes, you might have additional rules, as in nature it is, for certain circumstances. Yes, but that what must make that evident, what is in the child, are rules that never change. Yes? And then the second pillar of education is the child needs to do something. It needs to be given tasks in his daily life, so that through the task we remove or we bring into existence the error that it believes it lives for itself. A task you do for someone, it's a service, and a service makes happy. Yes? And if we know that only through service we become happy, then parents need to give their children tasks. They have to do things through the whole day. They must be given tasks. And so that the child knows, I'm here to serve. I'm not here for myself. I'm not here that others should fulfill my needs, but I'm here to serve. And by service, I fulfill my needs and I'm becoming happy. So, basic rules and tasks. So, let's look how that looks like. What are basic rules that never change? I consider I just put here a few, but there are more than that. And you might find them out and put them there in your house. But those rules in that house are for everyone, not just for the child. So one of the basic rules says everything has its time. There's nothing you can do outside of time. And so we must train the child that it knows there is a time for this, and the time for this, and the time for this, and it's also a limit of it. Now, the child thinks it's unlimited. Yes, if it's a God, you must show, you must help him understand that it is in time, and time is limited. That is, it has to do certain things in a limited time, and encourage to make that time even more shorter, so the child should become more efficient and more fast. So there is nothing that we cannot do out of time. When we go to bed, how much we sleep, when we eat, it's all in a time frame, and we can never pull ourselves out of time. So we must know at what time is done what. Very important. Most, I could say so, Christians, because I'm coming from a Christian perspective. A Christian should know when it's time which faith to exercise in order, to do the work that is done there. You cannot go and plant things in the winter when all is frozen. There is a time in nature for that planting, and it's a time for harvesting. You cannot change that. That is set. Yes, it depends on many other circumstances like temperature and so on, but I hope no one argues that something is outside of time. There's nothing outside of time. That's why we will speak a little bit. A very clear plan must be made to use the time efficiency. It's that which is our, you could say, our most precious gift. To use time efficiently makes us really happy. Really happy. Now, of course, the error goes against that. It wants to have spontaneity. But there is no spontaneity. There is no spontaneous things in nature. Spontaneity is not something that is good. It doesn't come from the truth. Yes, we should do all things calculated in time. Now, you could speak a lot of those things. Now, everything has its place. I believe this is very important that the child knows that you don't have two places for one thing. Or you have so many things that you don't know where to put them in place. If you never learn this as a child, you might never learn it. It's so important that if you have a key, the key has its place. Now, if you want, because of circumstances, to give one thing two places, that means if it's not here, it might be here. You can do that. It's not order. But it's still something that is overviewing. Oh, it's not here, I put it here. Because you know that those things are only there where you can put them. It's better to have just one. But if you are, different places and, then, but one place. Not when someone is asked for, you start searching. And then you think, oh, let's search here. And then they search there. And then they search there. And they get in stress. It never ends. You see, it's so important that from the beginning, mother and father know in the house, that's the place for the flower. That's the place for whatever. You give a place for everything. If you have a shirt, a dress, whatever you have, it must have its designed place. It's so basic that we know we cannot have different places or no places at all. When people have too much, then they place it from here to here to, it's total overview. That's why it's also important when, and this is also in the law, when people just taking in and find a place for something, but when you don't find any more place for something, then you have too much, you have to give it out. But since we are in the accumulation issue, you see some children are very accumulative, yes, they know a lot to take, so they don't know where to place it. Children today have so many toys, they have no place for it. But every car must be parked at the parking lot. In the evening, latest, it must be there. So when do you want to do this? You must do it very early in childhood. The child must know everything has its place. And so from the beginning, order will be there. And it will be something that is your whole life. You implement it. Because you know you can never put something in another place than in its own place. I find it fantastic. These are divine laws. The sun is at its place. The moon is at its place. The earth, the things on earth, they are on their own place. It's nothing different. You have the fishes in the water. You don't have them outside of the water because they could not live there. Everything has its place. Then everything has its task. That is, everything has its purpose. If you don't use it, then it is worthless. This is for those people who have a lot of things. They must know, if you don't use it, give it away. Because it does not fulfill the task in your house, but it might fulfill a task in another house. You cannot misuse something for something else. So what you have, the fork is for using the task for the fork, and the knife is for the other task. You cannot use the one for the other. You know, it's so much important to have a clear understanding what is that what you have, that it has to have a task. So nothing that exists in the house should be without doing a service. Yes, it might be only to do the service to show a flower or a picture on the wall, but it must have its task, its place, and also its time. And now everything has its own measure. So things have a measure. They have a size, so to say. So everything has its measure or size. So that is also important to know where you, for what task you use it, for what place and in time. So there's nothing that does not have its own size. And you might add others, like everything's. Yes? Because this, if the child is taking them in and makes them in order, it's fantastic. And you always see that the child will have issues with these things. Because its nature wants disorder. Its nature wants to go by pleasing. Just do what comes into your mind. That's why parents must be very consistent, and we'll speak in the next hour how to implement those, to be consistent, that the rules are kept. So when you have taught your child, let's say 3 weeks together, you put every evening everything in its place. And now after 3 weeks or whatever time you consider, you believe your child is able to do it by its own. So then you give the responsibility to the child alone. Now you're responsible for putting every evening your places back where you played with them into the right place. A child will one evening go to bed or not doing it. And what would you do then? Why does the child not do it? Because it has this tendency in it to just do what please. Now if she forgets it one night, you might be gracious and say, well, I understand. Let's see what she does tomorrow or he does tomorrow. And if it goes on, then you go, okay, we must correct this. And we'll speak about that as well. So everything must go one in the other. It must be like a machine. They're gears, but they cannot be separated. So we must always present to the child all things as a whole. Yes, they're different gears, time, place, task, size, but they work one in the other. For this to accomplish, mothers and fathers need to do a day plan and a week plan and a month plan, but there must be a day plan. It must be clear when is bedtime, when is rising time, when is eating time, when is working time, when is playing time. This looks at the beginning very strange because we are used to be spontaneous. And I was the most spontaneous person. But when God converted me, and we still had 3 of our 6 foster children at home, they were 14, 16, and 18. We made together a day plan and a week plan. And it was such a blessing to see how they cooperated so that we could work together. So I had to know when I go to bed, and it was 9 o'clock. And I would raise at 5:40 or 4:50. Yes, 10 minutes before 5, so that I have my own time to prepare and to have my time with God out in nature. And at 6 o'clock, I had my first encounter, my first visit with one of the children for morning devotion. And I took 15 minutes for each child in the morning to have a short devotion personally to teach them how to read or how to see the things that are written there, what they get out of it. Because no one teaches us how to extract the information from what we read. So we just read short things. One wanted to read that book, the other read that book, and the other would read the other ones. So I got to be very informed. The books were all from Ellen G. White, so we could read and say, what did God tell me? What's the power for today? So that was going from 6 to 6:45, 3 children, 15 minutes, each one personal. And at 6:45, we had family worship for 15 minutes. A time to sing and to prepare for the day. Now, back then, I did not understand all things that I understand today, but a family worship in the morning and the evening must have a purpose. And the purpose is a business meeting. You meet there together in order to know what comes today. It should not be a religious event or a religious process. It should be a business meeting. That is, we are the children of God. The family is the business of God. And we come together in the morning to see what each child and the parents have to do for today. And so, in a very fast way, the father can ask each child, so, do you know what day is today? What's the schedule you have? And then everyone shares his schedule. And then the father might ask, or the mother, how do you feel about the schedule? Are you thinking it's too much? Or, and then the children can say this, and everyone can tell. And then you say, well, and the child says, oh, I don't feel like today because then you say, oh, no worries. That's fine. I understand. It's a good reason to pray. It's a good reason to have some word of God that gives me the power to do it. And so worship makes sense. I mean, it brings something because it's included in the day. And when you do evening worship, and we did evening worship at 7:30 to 8 o'clock, so it's a longer time, then you evaluate. And then you come together. And then everyone has to share what he experienced that day. And he has to share, say, oh, wow. And then the parents can ask, okay, how did you cope with that provocation? And then the child says, and then you can ask, okay, how often did you pray that you should know how to do things? And then you get into an issue there. Yeah? So how much would you pray? So this is so important that when parents, usually when children get into an issue during the day, they run to get help. And then they come to mother. And mother is very happy to give good advice. But it's not very effective. So when we once taught a child something, and the child comes back asking how to do things, we are not giving explanation, but we encourage the child, whenever it has an issue, to connect to God, because they need to be taught how to connect in every emergency, not to run to the parents. The parents need to direct them to God. Imagine your child comes to you 10 times a day. And 10 times a day, you say, my dear child, I think you have a God. He can open up and give you the best idea to fulfill that. And then, if the child 10 times a day comes to you, in 1 month, how often will it come anymore? I mean, that's exactly what we need to educate. Education needs to take the mother and the father away from dependency and bind the child to God. And that must be a process so that at the age of 12 or maybe later, the child should so be used whenever it has an emergency. It doesn't run to a human. It doesn't run to someone to help in order to take decisions, and know how to do. You need sometimes help in technical things or, in things that you cannot do. But you don't go to ask for counsel anyone else than God. If you have a difficulty, you go and say, Lord, okay, help me. I was once in a family where the mother was putting the table and the 13-year-old child, or 12-year, I don't know exactly, was sitting together with me, and the father at the table waiting, the table should be done. We men like to sit on tables to be served sometimes, and we were having a visitation together, we chatted together, and that girl also sat with us, while mother was busy putting the table. And so I left that family and I suggested to parents and said, next time when I come, I want the child should do a 3-course menu, but mother should not help her do it. Mother should teach the child to cook, but then leaves the kitchen and lets the child do the process from the beginning to the end. The child comes and says, Mom, how did you Mom says, God will help you. You find it out. That's how you enhance, you provoke the spirit of the child to get active, to not get, ready food. No, it takes it and says, okay, I have to see how shall I do this. So mothers should be very clear in that place to just know how to direct the child to God. I came a few weeks later to that family again, and the parents, mother tried to do it, but like mothers are, they still think their children cannot do it by themselves. Oh, it's a terrible way to think. Let them do it. Let them make the mistake. Let them bring in the food and the guest is not happy with the food because it's too much salt or something was forgotten. It doesn't matter. We learn by experience. We learn by mistakes. So parents should guide the child in every emergency, not to themselves, but to God. That's why we have morning devotion and evening devotion. That's why we need God in every process. We don't go to God when we pray. We have to go continuously to Him. When we pray, we just prepare. We take some extra oil, so to say, to have something to burn during the day. But we continuously need to get the right information and the input. So you need a daily plan. The plan must be very clear. Then we ate together at 7 o'clock, and at 7:30, 7:45, everyone went to school and I went to work. I put my schedule, not according to my practice early in the morning, but I start at 9 so that I have the morning with the family. So, because it's very important, the father should be there. You see, when father is there, things work. When father is not there, sometimes or most of the time they don't work. So I came early from work. I didn't do overwork. At 5, I finished my work, and so I came home. To be at 6 home, where the children had their evening meal. I didn't eat in the evening, but I was sitting there together with them. Then we had 7 o'clock family time till 7:30, so that since the children were all teenagers, we had a very nice talk together, or we did something together. And then, of course, the evening worship. And then from 8 to 9, we could have private things to do. And at 9 o'clock, everyone was tired because when you rise early in the morning, you're very tired in the evening, and you're happy to go to bed because you know when the next morning comes and you're not well slept, then you must get out, but it's not feeling so good. So a daily plan. Everything has its time. We must put it into that. Then we must give to the children in their tasks a whole task responsibility. Like I said before, if they have to cook a meal, then they have to do it from the beginning to the end. And there should be days where the children are cooking. There should be days where it's the children time to just do that, and never use the child as a servant in the way to say, oh, bring out the trash, or just do some helping work. Help mom. No, mom never needs help. I hope you never ask your child to help you. It's wrong. We give the child a task, not for mom's sake, but for the child's sake. Because the task must fulfill the child. The task must make the child think It show its selfishness when it doesn't want to do it, and it must show that it gets happy when it fulfills it. And so that's why the task must have a full process in which, of course, the trash and other things are included, but it must be a complete thing that starts at the beginning and goes to the end. So that's how everything must work. You cannot give the child part works. And yes, you can work together. But when you work together, then even when you do something together, like cooking or whatever you do with the child still needs to have its own process from the beginning to the end. So be very paying attention to this. I believe it's such a basic principle to give the child full responsibility for all the processes. And then it's important to give the child always higher tasks than the child expects would be fit for its age and its capacities. Never give him small things to do in the way that do not make the spirit think, that gives him no challenge. Because how can you ever climb something if you're not challenged, if you have to put an effort? Don't prepare to the child all the things and say, okay, now do this. No. You must give him a plain responsibility for all the processes. If it fails, no worries. And give him a higher task than it expects, because then it climbs up. Because you see, we must go against the pride. Yeah? And when we give the child a lower task, we provoke pride. To think, oh, I'm here to put this little thing. No. Give him always things bigger, so that he might just, with all his strength, might reach it. That's how you have to give the tasks for your child, and it must be a whole process. And it must be repeating each day or each same day of the week, the same things repeats. That's routine. On Sunday, they cook. On Monday, they do the washing. On Tuesday, they have the garden. Whatever you have to give them, it must be a routine, so that when they awake in the morning and say, today is Tuesday, they know exactly. They go to the checklists. What's up for today? And of course, as they grow, you must adapt, bringing these tasks big, making them more and more and more higher. And now, one of those basic mistakes that parents are doing is to show the child how things should be done. I hope you just give hints. The child can look like you do them, but don't put ever your child to do things like you do them. Because however can the child get more than you, can do things better than you, if he must do them the way you tell them? So that's why I said the why and the what are plain. The how is individual. So give him hints, say, well, you saw how I do it, so try yourself how things are done. Because parents are so tempted in their selfish nature to just exactly the child should do the process. They think they must do it like them. That's never good education. Because God, and we must learn from him and from Jesus as he educated his disciples. He did never tell them how. You don't find in the Bible the how. You only find the what and the why. But you don't find the how. The how must be found out by the child itself. So important that you don't go into the how, because by going into the how, you go in his sphere of action where you have nothing to do. Let him find out. He might find a better way than you do it. He might have a better skill in certain areas than you have. So you want him to become very, very basis, to put his basis on the capacities God has given him, and you just put them through the tasks into action. So you can give hints. You even can give them a plan, how to build something, but never tell them how to build. Yes? Never tell them how to do it, which piece they should be done first. Let them find it out. Let them, because that's how the Spirit was made, to be active, to be searching all the time. And then one of the most important things is that parents take an account for what the children have done during the day. There must be a daily personal evaluation between the mother and child, because she's the one that educates the child. She's usually the one that is home. So she should have, if the child is very little, 2 times in a day to evaluate, because we might think the child forgets, but don't worry, the children never forget. Yes, they have a very, very great capacity, the smaller they are, to understand things. So don't be afraid that they won't forget. But in order to help them doing their jobs, well, you might do daily 2 times the evaluation, but at least once a day. And it must always be put in a time. You must have a time where you evaluate together with the child its day. And that is in particular things. You see, parents should observe their children with the eye ankle. When the children are playing, when the children doing what they do, they should not intervene. We'll talk about that also at a later time. They should observe. They should just intervene in emergency, but better not intervention, because you want to see where does the child go with what he does. And so you see it, and mother should take note in her mind, or she puts some notes to not forget, where she saw that the child did break the laws, where the child didn't behave correctly, where the child was neglectful, whatever. And then at the daily evaluation time, she might say, well, let's see how this day was gone. And then the child might explain first its own, and then mothers come with its specific events that she observed during the day. And then the child might say, how did you know that, Mom? Well, Mom has 10 eyes and 10 ears. But that's nice that the child knows that God is seeing it. Not in a bad way as a controlling thing, but in a helping thing. Mothers don't need to control their children. They just want to help them. And when they govern themselves all right, they don't need to bother anymore. Yes? It's not a controlling system. God is totally free. There is no control in heaven. And I'm looking forward to that place because that's how we were made, to do things out of conviction. So a daily evaluation of what the child has experienced and what the mother educates them. And if mothers do homeschool, they should educate and train the child that the child should understand its own thinking. Where did that thought process start? So that they can understand, here was the deception, I believed the lie that brought me to this place. So, but for this daily evaluation, the mother must do for herself a daily evaluation. She must talk to God every day in the morning, or whenever she finds time, depends how she finds the time, but she must evaluate and say, Lord, do I do well with your children in my raising them? Did I get lost yesterday? Why did I lost my temper? She must evaluate and not ask forgiveness for what she has done, but find out the cause that is in her selfish nature. So in order that she could remove that from her life. So education is education of a mother and the father as well. But mothers have more advantages with needing to educate their children because they can see themselves better in their children and in their losing their own control and saying, okay, Lord, I cannot teach my child to control myself if I don't know how I come to lose control. So here it is so important that every mother should understand her own life and be able to ask God, what shall I do with the child here? What shall I do with the child there? So that I can handle that in the right way. So I hope that these two pillars will make us think. And I just give principles. I never will tell you how to do it. But I just give the why and the what. And I'm hoping that we all go and stretch our minds. And if we want to have good results, we must have and must put great effort into it. But having the power of God and understanding the big picture, we might be very, very efficient to the glory of God and to our own fulfillment. To see the work that we do brings eternal results. So in the next hour, we will go to see what to do when children don't obey. So we go into the consequences and into other things that are important in understanding the fundamentals of education.